Hello everyone, and welcome to a yet untitled series of videos where we are going to be painting miniatures. Today we're going to be looking at one of these guys. This is an imp. It's from the Doom board game. It's from a franchise that I'm particularly fond of. This is the first time I'm doing this, so I'm probably going to be mumbling and nervous, but here we go. Let's do it. So the very first thing that we tend to do is we'll always do a dry brush. Yeah. The very first thing that we're going to do is we're going to do a base coat of black. I'm also going to show at the bottom of the screen all the different colors that we're going to be using here. In this case, the first color we're going to use here is pure black. I do like these Master Series paints right here from Reaper Miniatures. They're good paints. Okay, so like I said, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do a black base coat. I like to do black coats. Some people do different ones. Some people start with white base coats. Some people do gray, brown. Doesn't particularly matter. It just kind of depends on whatever is preferable to you because everybody prefers different things. I kind of like black because most of the time you're going to be going over the sort of base coat, and sometimes the little crevices that you can't really get to with your top layer brushes, the black gets into, and it's nice to have the deep crevices and nooks and crannies in there be a darker color, because it just makes more sense. If it's white or something like that, then it's hard to cover those lines up. Doop-a-doop-a-doo. Yeah, this might take a little while, but I hope you guys have the patience to sit through it and just listen and maybe just have a good time. Do something, relax. I probably should have rinsed this mini off with soap and water because it looks like the acrylic-based paint is having a little bit of a hard time sticking. Something that I did not account for, but that's my own fault. You notice that you'll want to hold the mini from the base as much as possible, because if you hold it from the model itself, well, obviously you'll scrape and scruff the paint off, and that's something that you want to avoid. Yeah, this paint is being especially runny right now. I definitely should have rinsed this off first. That's one thing to keep in mind if you're ever going to be painting any plastic miniatures. In particular, if you do any painting of Bones minis. I was talking earlier about, Reaper, because they are the company that makes these paints that I use. I do like them quite a bit. Well, they also have a line of series called Bones Miniatures, and they're ones that I do particularly like. I'll probably do some future videos with some ones there. But generally they've got kind of an oily sort of base to them, so it helps to just wash it with soap and water. Really, that's it. You can just kind of, run it under a sink. Just kind of run through it with your fingers, and dab a little bit of hand soap or dishwashing soap, and that tends to help. Okay, so we've got a base coat here. We're going to let this guy dry because he is a little bit wet, but we'll be back with him shortly. Okay, and we're back. So as you can see here, our imp is now pretty much completely dry. So after we do that, we're going to go over the top half, basically, with a color that I don't actually know the exact color of. I think it is chestnut brown, but it was actually given to me by Reaper Series Minis when I made a bulk order some years ago. I've used this paint multiple times now. Again, it doesn't actually tell me the color that it is, but I'm fairly certain it's chestnut brown. But it's a good color because it has kind of a brownish color with a little bit of a red sort of tint, which is good for these demonic, imp creatures. I didn't address this yet, but one of the things is that I do like to use very, very small brushes. You can use pretty much any kind that you want, but I am pretty particular about my brushes. Let me find the one that I want here. Okay, so I'm going to use this brush right here. Again, you don't have to use necessarily this kind, but I do like these Master's Touch paint brushes. This is a 12-0 round. I'm not gonna lie, I don't actually know what these measurements really mean, but I just kind of went to went to the store and bought some paints that I figured would work. So we're gonna use this brush in order to put the brown on there. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna cover what is basically the entirety of the top of the chest and all that, but we're gonna cut off a few particular places. You can see on his thighs here, he's got a little bit of these. They almost kind of look like pads. So you're just going to go over these pads right here. But then you're going to leave the bottom half just the way it is. So we're going to go over these. Oop, accidentally got his arm there a little bit. That's okay. And then on his groin here, you can see there's a little bit of a something kind of going right there. So we're just going to do that. But again, we're going to leave the bottom half of it blank. Or rather, we're going to leave the bottom half of it black. Reason why we're doing this is because when you look at the original high-res images of the imp from the video game, they actually have, they're not just a single color, they're actually kind of multicolored, where the chest is more of a sort of a reddish brown color, and then as it starts to get to their limbs and reach their hands and feet, they start to kind of darken out into this sort of oily black color, and we're going to do that in a little bit here. But now this is where you're going to start getting into some details here. So I'm going to do his face, and I'm going to do his jaw here, but you want to do the jaw and not touch the teeth or the sort of inner crevices of his head. So as you can see, we're kind of going right here on the jaw. Then we're gonna go all about here. I think some of the crevices of this of the black paint of the base coat that I had there is still a little bit wet, but that's okay. That'll be fine. Okay, and once again, we're gonna kind of do the sort of side of the head here, and then the front of the head. But again, you don't want to get into those inner crevices where his eye is actually at, because we want to keep his sort of face a dark color, and that'll create a nice contrast for the rest of the skin tone. Now on the back here, you can see he's got these sort of bulges coming out of almost like his shoulder blades. We're going to not actually paint those, because that we're going to use with our sort of darker color later on. So we're actually going to paint around those bulges, but not the bulges themselves. That's really the key with painting just in general as a whole, is that it's kind of just take your time. Don't stress. Get some small brushes. Yeah. Just kind of enjoy yourself. Everything will work out. I do like this brown color. Again, it's got like, it's a very, very, very strong brown, but it's got just a little bit of a sort of red tint to it, and I think that kind of makes it pop. I think it's very, very striking, and it's also easy to spread. It's a very good paint. Now, if you'll notice, he's got these little kind of spikes on his shoulders. I'm actually not going to paint those, because we're going to go over those with another color later on. Make sure you get all those nooks and crannies in there. You don't want to leave anything out. He's got these sort of little kind of things on his hips there. Make sure you get those. Whoops. Might have gotten a little bit of his leg there, but that's okay. That'll be fine. Okay. Now this can be seen as kind of the tricky part, so don't be too stressed out about it now, but we're going to sort of blend the color down the arms and legs a little bit. You're not going to do just a straight up, you know, blotching of the color, but just kind of put a little bit of paint on the brush and then just really lightly kind of stroke down the arms and the legs here. Again, you don't have to make it look super perfect because we're going to do the same thing with our darker color later on, and hopefully they'll start to blend when we do that. But already it looks relatively blended there. You can see it kind of starting to blend down his arm. Okay, we're going to do the same thing on the other arm here. Okay. So we've got a pretty good start so far here. As you can see, we've got the main color right there. Oh, you know what? I almost missed one of his little thigh pads here. Whoops. I'm glad I looked it over before I moved on. You know, and I think I did the same thing with one of my other minis, and I just kind of went over it like nothing happened. I bought an entire set of the Doom board game just to paint the miniatures. Because I do like painting minis quite a bit, and I love Doom quite a bit. It's probably my favorite video game franchise. It's not everybody's, and that's fine, but this is something that I like quite a bit. Whoops, let's get a little bit there. Whoop, out of frame. I gotta keep my eye on the miniature as well as my camera here, because I gotta make sure it looks good on screen. And sometimes it's hard to multitask. Alright, well, I'm gonna dry my brush off with, rinse my brush off with just a glass of water, and you can just kind of rub the side of the brush against the water and just make sure you get all the paint out. Get the water out, and I just kind of brush it against my pant leg. I'm wearing cheap pants, I don't care. Some people use paper towel, it doesn't really matter. Okay, so we got all the basic stuff there. At this point, we're going to kind of go over our darker color a little bit. So we're going to move on to, you know, another free sample, actually. I've ordered a lot of miniatures from Reaper Minis, and they've sent me some samples multiple times now. Very nice of them. Very, very cool. I do like that Reaper company quite a bit. I believe this color, and again, I don't know this for sure, but I believe this color is Deep Ocean. It's kind of a darker, little bit of a bluish color to it. It's not quite as dark as the black. If you look at the black here and you kind of look at them, you can see the black is darker, but this deep blue, or Deep Ocean, again, I think I'm just kind of looking at the Reaper website and just kind of assuming that that's what this color is, because it doesn't say, but this has a nice dark color that's not quite black, has a little bit of different coloration to it. Alright, so I'm just going to use that same brush that I was using here to do the chestnut color. I'm going to dab it in just a little bit, and I'm going to cover pretty much the entirety of the arms and legs. But yeah, you can see that it's not quite the same color as the black, but it is close. It's kind of hard to tell them apart at a first glance if you don't have good lighting or a good camera or anything like that. And, you know, honestly, my camera here is not even that great. I've got my own little custom rig here that I just kind of built with Legos to keep it all steady. That's mostly working, I think. Okay, I'm basically going to do all of the arms and the legs here. Or all of the hands, rather, first. I'm going to do all the hands first. And then the foots. Little feet. Little demon feet. These guys sure are obnoxious. I don't know if you played the Doom game or not, but they really, really like to run up walls and cause mischief. Alright. Now you might have noticed that this base is actually not the same base that that came with the miniature. The miniature was just printed or sculpted, I don't really know what the word is, with its base all as one piece. I actually cut the base off and put it on my own custom all black base here, and that way I didn't have to paint the base, because I do like having just really simple black bases for all my miniatures. But, you know, you can use whatever base you want. Doesn't really matter. Getting right up on his butt. Painting on his butt. Man, I've got this light shining right here in my face. It's actually getting a little toasty. My neck is sweating a little bit. That's okay. I'll take one for the team. Get right up into his thigh, but just be careful not to paint over that chestnut color. That's the thing. I'll just keep reminding you. This is all about patience. Just take your time. Don't stress. Make it look good. Everything will work out fine. Okay. Alright. Now that we've got pretty much the entirety of the arms and legs here, as you can see, just, you know, make sure you get everything, you know, and take your time. Whoops, I might have missed a little spot here. Looks pretty good. Okay. Oop, got it on my Lego. Okay. Alright, well, after you get that part done, I'm actually going to rinse off this brush. I'm not going to use this brush for what I'm going to do, because, again, I'm going to do kind of a blending thing here. I tend to use just really rough but thick brushes for this next thing that I'm going to do here. I'm going to use one that I've used quite a bit here. This is just another brush that's kind of similar to that, but if you look at it, it is very rough. It's not. Oh, I got a big dog hair on there. I got a husky. I got a big fluffy husky, and her fur just gets everywhere. Alright, but again, you see the bristles here are really in rough shape, but that's okay, because we can actually use that to just kind of like bend and mess with the bristles quite a bit. What I'm basically doing here is I've got a little bit of paint on a little bit of plastic here, and what I'm really just doing is this right here, and I'm just kind of getting it really lightly onto the brush, but just enough. So, and then I'm going to use that to sort of blend my way up. Blend my way up the arm here. And then I kind of want to make it look like a little bit of a sort of seamless blending between the base of the arms and up to the forearms. Or not to the forearms, to the biceps and triceps. I don't know anatomy. That's okay. But that looks pretty good. That doesn't look too bad. I think that'll work out. And again, the reason why we're doing that is because when you look at the sort of high-res, you know, really good, fully lit pictures of the imps from the game, they've got this this sort of like colored variation going on here on their arms and legs. Alright, so we've got that all set. Alright. Well, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to get to what is really the core of this painting technique, and that is dry brushing. With dry brushing, what you're basically doing is you're taking a sort of a lighter color of the brush that, lighter color of the paint that you're going to use and going over it, over the darker color. In this example, we're going to be going over the sort of like reddish, you know, brown color there, and we're going to go over that with a tanned skin color. It's almost just like a fairer version of that color, alright? So what we're going to do is we're going to shake this bottle up. Shake it up. Alright. Let me see actually if I can get this in picture here, in frame. Yeah, kind of. Okay, let me see. So what I'm doing is I'm just going to kind of really lightly, you know, get some paint out onto the onto this little plastic surface. Make sure you use a plastic surface. Don't use a paper surface, because the paper tends to tends to soak up the paint, and that's not something we want to do. All right. I like to use really, really flat brushes. So as you can see here, I've got a nice sort of just flat brush. This is another, again, Master's Touch paints. I really like these. These are shaders. Again, I don't really know what these numbers mean, but this is a 2, so let's go from there. All right. So what you're going to do for dry brushing is you're just going to take a little bit of paint off of your little glob there, and you're just going to take a really, really small amount. You don't need that much. Just a really small amount. And you're going to get it all into the bristles, but you're, again, not very much. They call it dry brushing because the brush is almost dry. There's very little paint on it. And then you're just going to really lightly go over the surface. And you want to go against the lines like this. You see the sort of shoulder pad here? I'm going against those lines. You don't want to go with the lines. You know, you don't want to go this way or this way with the lines. You want to go against them. And that brings out, just brings some depth to the Mini. As you can see here, it's kind of putting a little bit of color onto the actual edges. And that gives it a little bit more depth, a little something. You can go over the blending just really lightly. You know, that'll be okay. You can go over the spikes, it doesn't really matter. Okay. But again, really, really lightly touch it. And you're not using very much paint. You're just giving depth to a color that you've already chosen, and you're going over it with sort of a lighter version of the color. I don't remember if I pointed this out in the frame or not, but I'm using the tanned skin color. You know, just a little bit of a sort of lighter color of this chestnut brown. And again, go against the sort of lines there. Don't go with them. See the chest here? Don't go with the chest. Go against the chest. Yeah, and that really brings out those edges. And like I said, this is sort of the thing that makes this technique what it is. And it's just, you know, I don't use inks or washes or anything like that. And there's nothing wrong with using those things. You know, they obviously get you some really, really good paint jobs, some really good professional quality paint jobs. But we're just wanting to do something really, really simple here. Something that pretty much anyone can do, anyone like you or I can do. And you don't need to get multiple types of, you know, paints for... or multiple types of, you know, things. You don't need inks, you don't need washes, you just need paints. That's all you need. You just need some good paints. And again, I do like these Master Series paints here. They're good paints. Oh, you know what? I forgot to go over the little humps there with that dark ink color, but that's okay. We'll just do that last. Against the lines. Don't be super concerned about going over the teeth just yet, but we do kind of want to save the teeth for last. They are kind of tricky. Gonna get underneath his little chin here. Yeah, it's coming along pretty well, I think. That looks pretty good. I'm just going over the whole guy, making sure that everything looks pretty good. Got all the little nooks and crannies there. Alright, well after you do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over the base colors, that base, you know, deep ocean color that I used for the extensions of the arms and legs. And I'm actually going to grab this, oh, where is it at? Alright, so we still want to keep those appendages dark. They're very dark. That's just how they are, but I'm going to use this deep red color. It's a very, very, very dark red. It's Sorry, I was looking at something on my phone. Ah, which was probably not very good etiquette for making YouTube videos, but oh well, shame on me. Okay, so again, this very, very dark, deep red color, and you can use that to go over that sort of deep ocean color, and that'll just give it a little bit more depth, a little bit of redness, a little bit of a sort of demonic color to it. Oh, I can't get this paint out. Sometimes one of the things about these paints is that the spout kind of gets solidified like that, so I can't actually get the paint to come out, you know, no matter how much I squeeze. But if you've got a safety pin here, you can actually just take a safety pin, make sure that there's no wet paint on the end. This is dry paint, but that's okay. And you can actually just kind of poke in the top of it. Oof. Just kind of twist it around a little bit and just pull it right back out. Usually that kind of frees it up. So if I try to take this out, there we go. Now we're getting something. Okay. So again, we're going to take our flat dry brush and we're just going to really lightly get some of it onto the brush. Not too much. And then we're just going to go over the hands and legs and arms. Again, it's not going to be, you know, you don't want this to jump out too strongly, but it just kind of gives a little bit of flavor to these sort of dark appendages here. Gives it a little bit of depth. You don't really want to leave minis just a single coat of color, because then it all just kind of blends together. There's no depth to it. This is the thing that I really, really like about this technique here is dry brushing, is that it really, really gives depth. Yeah, it's got kind of a wet, sort of bloody look, which is pretty appropriate for these guys. They're little monstrous bloody suckers. Probably hearing me breathe and stuff too probably doesn't sound very ideal, but sorry about you. And you're probably also looking at my really gross fingernails too. I got a really bad nail biting habit, but something I've always had when I was a kid. Since I was a kid, rather. Kind of a hard habit to kick, but I'm not hurting anybody. Okay. Alright. So we got that done now. You know, we're actually really almost done. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to get into the gritty fine details here. Alright, now this is probably my favorite part of painting the minis because it's probably the thing that actually really brings it together the most. So you're going to take a really, really, really thin brush. This is a really, really tiny, really, really thin brush. See, it barely even shows up on the camera. This is another Master Series brush. It's 18-0 and it's a spotter. I think spotter just means that it's really, really tiny and it just has a single little bit on it. So, you know what, I'm going to get that off there while I'm thinking about it. You can just kind of scratch it off. Close enough. Okay, so again, you're going to take this really, really, really thin brush, and now I'm going to use this leather brown color, and this is what I'm going to use in order to put on the sort of the claws and the teeth and the spikes. With the spikes here, you can do a little bit of a dry brushing technique with them, but you don't really have to because, you know, they're very fine details, and it's kind of hard to do some dry brushing. But if you go over it with a nice color that contrasts everything else, then really don't need to worry about it. I'm having trouble getting this paint out too, so I'm gonna need to poke a hole into this guy. So let's do that. Oop, a little bit coming out. Ah, it's really stiff in there. There we go. All right. Let's try squeezing that out. There we go. All right. Now this is when you get into the fine details, and this is when you gotta just be careful. Take your time. Another thing that I like to do is rest your hands on, you know, the corner of a table or a desk or something like that. That'll help steady your hands quite a bit, and it makes it really easy to get these sort of fine details here. You're just gonna poke very, very gently into the paint here. Very gently into the paint, and then you're just gonna look for the teeth and just do little spots. Again, take your time. Take your time. Rest your hands on the corner of a desk or table. That'll steady your hand quite a bit. But yeah, we're just getting these teeth to show up. He's a snarly guy. Got a real grimace on. It's real slow. Real careful. Whoop. Almost got a little out of hand there, but it worked. We're good. We're in good shape. And if you got a nice wet dot on the end of your brush, then you really don't need to press that hard. You just really, really lightly tap it on there. That's all that you need. And there you go. You got a nice toothy grin on him. Yeah, that looks good. It is hard to get some teeth on some other minis. It just kind of depends on the types of minis that you have. The next thing we're going to do are his claws here. So we're just going to look at the ends of his claws, where he's got the ends of his hands, where he's got the claws there. And, you know, very, very basic. Just put them on there. Lay them on. That's it. Looks like these claws are a little bit more prominent, a little bit easier to paint. Alright, well, I got the claws on there, got some nice claws, some good teeth. Next thing we're going to do are his big the claws on his toes. So something here is that you want to make sure not to just go over the whole thing like this. Go through and do each toe individually. If you can, leave a little bit of a sort of crack or a crease in between each toe, and that way it'll bring them together. Instead of just looking like a single glob of a claw, it looks like 3 individual claws here. And again, take your time. Don't stress. Yeah, it looks pretty good, huh? Got some nice climbing feet, maybe. Maybe that's why they've got claws on the ends of their foot. 'Cause yeah, it doesn't really make sense. I don't think they do a lot of clawing with their toes. Just like those silly velociraptors in those Jurassic Park movies. Not sure why they had those big claws on their hind feet. Because they weren't very practical to use, but then again, actual velociraptors didn't really much look like those real-life velociraptors, as they were known. Those were, in the movie at least, modeled more after the dinosaur Deinonychus, which is another type of dinosaur, but yeah, they're very, very large. But actual velociraptors were really only about 3 feet tall. Something that a lot of people don't really think about or know, but yeah, actual velociraptors were probably not nearly as menacing as they were in the Jurassic Park movies. But that's okay, because the whole point of Jurassic Park 2 was that they were genetically modified creatures, so, you know, they looked a little different. But I'm getting off topic. I'm talking about Doom and painting minis here, not Jurassic Park. Alright. So now we got his hands and his claws. We're going to go ahead and do the spikes on his back now. And again, you can do this sort of, a darker color underneath this. I tend to do earth brown or something like that, and then I'll dry brush this leather brown over it. But, you know, again, with these spikes, it's not super necessary. feel like if you just go over it with this leather brown color, that's about enough. Alright. I think we got this pretty much done. We got the spikes good. I think he's got some kind of spikes coming out of his head there, so let's go ahead and get those too. I like this leather brown color. It has kind of a bony feel, but instead of being, you know, like a really dry bone, like a skeleton that you'd see in a desert, it's got more of a sort of lively bone color. Looks a little bit more organic, a little more natural. Alright, we're actually almost done. We've really only got one more thing to go, and that's his eyes. So I'm going to use the same type of brush, that really tiny spotter brush, and the imps actually had yellow eyes, so we're going to use this sun yellow color here. Don't need much, just a little tiny drop. Ah, man, all of my paints are dried. I have to get into this guy with a safety pin too. There we go. Drop that right there. Oh, come on. Well, maybe. Tell you what, I'll just take the cap off. Set it down on the corner, get a nice little drop like that. There we go, that'll work. Okay. Alright, and again, just be really careful. Just be really careful, take your time. Get a tiny little drop here. Get right up in the eye, support your hands on your desk. And just really lightly put it on there. Doesn't take much pressure. There's really no pressure at all. There we go. Yeah. That really pops out, doesn't it? Alright, we're going to do the same thing on the other side here. And that's it. I think we got a nice imp there from Doom. Looks pretty good. I think that, you know, it's not perfect, but I think that that's really all you really need in order to make them look good. So, thank you very much for sitting with me through this. Might do some more videos of these. I'll work on, you know, my editing techniques and what I say and how I show things, and we'll work on that in the future. But, thank you guys for watching, and if you want me to do any other kinds of minis, just, you know, just let me know in the comments, or, you know, however you want to let me know. Thanks, guys. Bye.